Lego.
You beat my butts up. The Lego made it through. Let go, everybody. Welcome to another episode
Lego, everybody.
of the Alternative Blacks podcast. Today, Chris and I will be discussing all things sports. It's the sports episode.
The sports episode. We've never talked sports before. This is the time.
No. I don't even know sports, you know?
Yeah, that sentence just it's way more
Screams.
beautiful. Yeah.
I enjoy sports ball as next as the much person.
And what you call a layman.
And I'll explain my my current state in a little bit. I'm excited because I think you said you have a sample game. Before we get into that, we should definitely get into what we are drinking, starting with you, because I'm going to look back and see if I have a sample game for you.
Ooh, okay. So I am drinking Lock Cubed or Lock 3 by The Veil. It is a triple dry hopped West Coast IPA. And I was coming in real light today. And this one is brewed with Centennial, Simcoe, and Citra. And as you can see, it's got this real nice, slightly foggy. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh. This comes in at 6.5%. It is a West Coast IPA, but it is triple dry hopped. So it's not a triple IPA, but it's as a triple dry hopped is, it's slightly cloudy, slightly murky, really floral on the nose, and just really crisp. Wow, that's good. That's good. It's definitely on the sweeter, juicier hop notes side because it's dry hopped. It's less bitter, but there's still a nice bitterness to it. I really enjoy this. I would probably give this, it's like a 4.5 right now. I'm gonna say 4.5 right now. And of course, the Veil is an awesome brewery, so
That she be. She be
the
awesome.
RCB. Have you found a sample, sir?
I am going to skip this round.
You're gonna pour your beer instead.
I want to cue it up in a different way than the the app usually does, and so wanting to get this prepared properly, I'm just going to forego this round and defer to you. Uh,
You're prepared. I was just gonna play it off my phone.
yeah. Um, this is really interesting. Actually, the first time I'm looking at it, this is a Vienna lager. Vienna lager is arguably the oldest pale lager in history. The style was created by brewers many centuries ago, sharing malting and roasting techniques. It's true to style and brewed with all German ingredients. We taste whole grain bread crust and crackers. They use Northern Brewer hops, Vienna, Munich, and Carafone malts, and lager yeast. Go figure.
Go figure. Wait, hold on. We taste. Who says we taste? Is that Victory that says we taste?
No.
But Trogs?
Nope.
No. Philly Brewery. Philly Brewery?
Nope.
No. I know the We Taste. Where is that from? This is more fun than the sample game.
Yeah. It's signed. They sign it at the end. It's the Robs.
The Robs.
Oh.
I'm blanking.
Do you want the name of the beer?
Sure, give me the name.
Words of Wisdom.
Words of Wisdom.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that beer name.
You want to see the can?
All right, hit me with the. This is probably going to be a giveaway.
Sorry. What does it do?
There you go. Is that a that looks like a poor man label. Is that
No. So this is from Our Town Brewing.
right? Okay, yes. Yes. I was like, that was gonna be my next guess. I'm like, it seems so local, the label.
Yeah. So I after work today, I stopped by their tap room in Philadelphia,
I forgot about that. See, completely forgot about that.
and so they are to blame for my current state of being. I walked in, beat the rain, and just shot the shit with Ian, who is the bartender and manager there. Um, Happens to live in the neighborhood, and we got to know each other pretty well. Talked about beer from Central PA to Philly, you know. Um, and I went through most of the non IPA offerings that they had there. They had a Dunkel, they had a Vienna, they had a double dry hopped Pilsner, which they call a West Coast Pilsner, which is really
Okay.
fucking good. Um, they do a milk carton, not a milk tube, and they have this glass, like the milk cartons you used to get, like the chocolate milks. They have a glass
Yeah,
version of that, and they do the milk tube in that.
that's cool. I
So that
like
was that
that.
was a lot of fun. Their bourbon for their citywide is starts with a B. I can't forget it, Berkeley or something like that. It's Thistle
Burley,
Fountain. Burley.
Burley,
It's
Burley bourbon. I have it
Yeah. So
right.
it's that.
Yeah,
I
that's
didn't
a.
do I didn't do a citywide. I
Oh, I was just talking about citywides today. Do you realize that like west of Reading, citywides just aren't a thing? I didn't
Citywides.
realize how local that
No,
was.
it's a hyper localized thing. Citywides are really born out of Bob and Barbara's in South Philly, which was traditionally a shot of like wild turkey and PBR. Like a well bourbon and
What
PBR.
is it? Well, bourbon being wild turkey is kind of wild.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just making that shit up. I will do a citywide on this episode, because this
Oh, is that
episode
we're doing citywide? Well, I don't. I have an IPA. Oh, you have the Michter's Rye.
because you
I
know
just had some. Yeah, I just had some of that last Saturday,
and
actually.
and so the
And
reason
you know
why
what? We're gonna citywide this up
there
real
we go.
quick.
Bring it out. Um, we're talking about sports, and I thought it would be like appropriate. It's the episode that's kind of in line with all of this, with my dad's like anniversary of his passing. Um, so if we didn't do a shot of bourbon, I think he would have called us a pussy. So
Well, instead of bourbon, I do have some rye whiskey.
there we
So
go.
this is Crystal Finch's straight rye whiskey.
So they had that right next to the Burley, and that's why I asked about like what's the citywide, because he had that. He goes, "Oh, it's the Burley." I said,
Dude, this is some of the smoothest rye whiskey I've ever had. It is like, give this a try
yeah,
sometime.
but
It's it's crazy good, but yeah. If I knew we were doing this, I would have stopped and picked up a bottle of Eagle Rare, you know. And I thought about this too, after our exchange the other night, and I was like, I think I'm just gonna buy a bottle of Eagle Rare and just like every like once a year, just a shot out of it
yeah,
in Jim Bob's honor, and see that's gonna last me probably another decade. But
right.
I think I think that's gonna be my nod to him. And then one day I'm just gonna wake up and it's just not gonna be on the card anymore. It's just it's just gone.
This is mine now.
It's gonna show up at your mom's house back in Reading. It's
Right. Oh,
like
that'd be too funny. Um,
but cheers, you probably already drank yours.
no, no, I was waiting for you. So
Cheers.
here's the Jim. I got yelled
Cheers.
at, but I'll explain after the shot.
All right.
The very, very rare occurrence you see liquor consumed on this show.
Yeah. I think did we do a mixed drink episode the one time
I think
actually,
so.
and that was it.
Yeah. Um. No, it's funny. I did a call in with my mom and Bruce on April 2nd,
Nice.
and so on the call, I'm obviously the only one that calls him dad, and so I'm just like, well, here's to Jim, and you could hear Kim in the back on Bruce's side go, "That's dad to you."
Well, first of all, we don't know him as Jim. We knew him as Jim Bob.
Jim Bob or Coach.
Yeah. And we didn't call him Jim Bob to his face because we were
We would
terrified.
never. um, but I thought that today's episode is really symbolic of him because there's a lot of things that are happening, and I think he would have had a lot of very interesting takeaways. My mom,
Yeah.
if my mom hasn't heard this by now, she'll eventually hear it, or maybe she'll never hear it. It's I always think back to one of the bigger sports moments that was a off the field or off the green sports moment, and that was Tiger Woods when we were in high school, and him
Mm.
and all the women and all that shit, right? And so a lot of people at that time, especially it being Tiger Woods, like screw all the other womanizing like athletes back in the day. Like Tiger Woods was the wow, can you believe it person. Um, and my dad put it into perspective. He goes, I'm nobody, and the amount of people who know I'm married, who know I have a kid, all these things that still try with me, I can't imagine what it's like walking off the like back nine. Like, he goes,
Walking off the back nine, yeah.
right. And he's just like, so am I really gonna like say anything about this? Probably not. And that was a really interesting perspective, something that I don't think I would have come to a conclusion by myself without him.
Yeah, I mean it's literally that Bill Burr bit years later.
Yeah.
So your Bill Burr basically stole from your dad.
No, that,
Like,
it doesn't surprise me.
yeah. But it is an interesting perspective. It's like what he did was he shouldn't have done it, right? But he's not so much worse than the average person. It's just he was put in a position to where he was going to fail based on his shortcomings as a person.
Right.
And not that those shortcomings were much greater than the average person.
Yeah.
Shortcomings as they were.
As they were.
As it were, yes.
But it's interesting because we're going to talk about baseball, we're going to talk about basketball, we're going to talk about a bunch of different things. And I think it's easy to start off with. Let me backtrack it before we get into all of it. Let me tell you a little bit about our town in Philly, right? So it's in a very interesting location. So you remember South, the jazz restaurant?
Yeah.
It's about a 5-minute walk from there. And if you remember that, it's pretty fucking like rough. Like,
yeah, that's like South is like,
yeah, you don't see breweries opening up there. Now, with that being said, they opened up in a building that just has been rehabilitated. It's on the upward swing of gentrification. And so with that being said, I was talking with the manager, and he was kind of like in the same point. It was just like, you're opening up 15th and Ridge? Like, what? And then we both took a step back, and we're like, oh, this is smart. Like,
It's like, yeah, it's like this is they're getting in ahead of the gentrification in
You're
a way.
by the Met, like it's it's a stone's throw from the Met. It's all of these buildings are
That's
going up.
that's true, but it's not saying much because once again, the Met is still like it's not like you turn the corner and it's rough, but like if you walk a couple of blocks like the wrong direction.
Right. Yeah, you could easily get like put into like a weird situation, and we just think it's smart if the status quo continues, it's going to benefit because they're going to get in on a deal where if you look at 5, 10 years, brewery's going to try to open up there and be like, hold up, you got in on what?
Yeah, yeah, they're probably their costs are so low in comparison to what it's going to be.
I mean, and
So yeah, it's smart.
you're not brewing out of it. It's just a tap room, so the beer's there. Like,
Okay.
yeah,
I you said tap room and it didn't click in my mind, but it's like, oh yeah, okay. So they're literally just sending their beer down there, which they probably already were doing because I think our town definitely leaned heavier early on into the distribution aspect of it. We talked about that before, different strategies on how to
yeah,
expand. Our town's cans were in distributors very early on, and they opened up like I think they opened up right before the pandemic, like right before. Like I think like either early 2020 or very late 2019.
yeah,
So like and their stuff was in the stores during the pandemic. So like they had that goal of get the beer out.
yeah. And whatever they're doing is working. And their
I
beer
enjoy
is
beer.
fire. We're doing like a Vienna lager. This was probably the best beer that I had, next to maybe that dry hop pilsner to them.
Yeah,
Um, and I
yeah.
pleasantly surprised, in an industry that can, beat it to death with IPAs. Not to say that they didn't have a good portion of their beer listed as an IPA. I still think they did a pretty good job with the diversity of beer.
They
Anything that you
do.
wanted.
I agree. They have a good diversity of beer. And I just was looking up like what I've checked in from them. When I saw that can, I was just mistaking the brewery labels that I had in my repository. I was thinking of our town's Pilsner
Yeah,
when I saw that can, the
yeah,
proper Pilsner, which is the exact same label that you have, just different words.
right.
So like
I knew it
that's
was
why
gonna
it
be
felt so familiar.
I knew it was gonna be right there for you, and so as soon as I started reading it and like I saw the fucking gears going, I was like, "Yeah, this is exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to play with this, wanted to play with Chris a little bit, and it worked." So
Psychological fuckery happening.
right, right. So I'm happy. I'm happy that this place is open. It's really cool. It actually led me to meeting somebody else within like craft beer industry, who lives in Fishtown. Um, is very
Yeah.
familiar with like we we were just shooting the shit about all things craft beer to the point where he was like, "Do you like work in the industry?" I was just like, "No."
No, but I did. Like technically you did
Right.
work in the industry. Like you have
And
like
we
the
briefly
experience.
we briefly spoke about it, and so on the way out, he goes like, "What's your Instagram so we can like connect? Maybe I'll go to Humble Parlor," because I was pushing Humble Parlor onto him. Um, and so I was like, "Oh yeah, it's Beer Master too." She goes, "Yeah, you like beer."
We get it. We get it. Well, it used to be Toots 23.
hmm Yeah, but it was basically like I didn't end
Yeah.
up in this tap room by accident. Like, and this was very very deliberate. Um,
Yeah.
and so yeah. With that being said, I thought our town opening up was a weird move. Initially.
Agreed. And we've talked about it on the live, I
Yeah,
think. Like we're like, oh, our town's opening. That's kind of random.
yeah, but they again they hit a avenue, hit the spot exactly where they need to be. Um, I think if they're making this move now, I think they must be comfortable with the idea that it's going to take some time.
Yeah. I agree with that
It's not
based
our
on what you
first
just said.
location. It's not a location that's really close to their location. So I think it is smart in that capacity.
True. I agree because I think like their their range of influence is such that, and Pennsylvania is such that it's so widespread. Like once you leave the Lancaster area, like you're not really gonna gain much of a following until you hit another metropolitan area,
Right.
and Philly happens to be that area. So you open up in the city, probably in a place that was relatively cheap. Like all of that together makes a lot of sense for them
Yeah.
because if they were to open up, say, like in Reading, well, there's so much. Reading's the next closest metropolitan area to Lancaster between Lancaster and Philly. Well, I mean, you're not gonna get any traction there with there's so many places that are already established with Pagoda City, Broken Chair, Sly Fox. Like you
And
have to
let's
go further.
and let's be honest, you're not creating a new base there. You're taking
Right.
from
It's the
what's
same base.
probably because you're not taking from Reading, you're taking from Wyo, you're taking from Sinking Spring, right? And these are all the people that are traveling to Lancaster anyway, right?
Exactly. Very true. Very true. Yeah. The culture is such that you have to leave that area and you either go west or you go east. They chose to go east and
Smart.
smart. Agreed.
So
Couple
kudos to
fingers for
them.
our bird.
I wish them all the success. I think it's gonna be fun for when you get down to come check it out, just because it is much different. Our town in Lancaster is a large scale like operation. This is
Yeah.
very this is very small, very intimate though, and it's really cool.
Yeah. I'm imagining it's like kind of the difference between like Dock Street West or not Dock Street South
and
and the
West, yeah.
tapping in Fishtown.
Oh my god, yeah, very very much so. Um,
The ratio.
yeah, that's very on the nose. Yeah. Um, but I guess uh, with that being said, we can get into sports. How do we want to start the sports?
Sports. Let's start something light and easy, like the fact that the Phillies suck right now.
Okay,
That's
I
light and easy, right?
all right. What are we like? 6 games in, 7 games in?
So you're telling me a third to a quarter of the season has been a complete and utter shit show? I know it's early. I'm being hyperbolic or whatever. The Phillies always turn it on in July.
Right.
That's what I'm
Well,
waiting
so
for.
let's talk about it. We've seen 2 teams so far. We've seen the Braves,
Which it's the Braves.
right, and we've seen the Reds. Now, which performance made me more worried?
Probably not the Braves
The
performances.
Reds' performance was like, oh.
Uh,
The
yeah,
Braves,
because
like, as
opening
tough.
night to toss up, opening night it's just like nerves, adrenaline. You can play really bad, or you can play really poorly. Like it's just a very hit or miss type of deal. The second night, it's just like, ooh, that's bad. But it's also the Braves. And if we know anything about the Braves, they're great in the regular season. But let's see them in the postseason. And we have, and we whooped up on them. So I don't know what they're talking about. So
Right.
we'll see them in September.
Yeah. There are some things that I still feel need to be woken up.
Hmm.
From our team, I will say it's still like brushing shit off, like needing a couple like more cups of coffee. I still have faith in Nick. I still think he needs others around him to be more inspired. I don't think he is the inspirational character on the team, but it was what happened. It was Stott was on first, and they threw the ball to first, and it was an overthrown ball. And Stott got up, pushed the first baseman with 2 hands, and we got to second, right? And so Nick was up, and the first two swings he had afterwards looked like he was trying to go yard again. And that was a look in his eyes that I haven't seen up until that point. And I was like, that little more like raw feeling once the like Phillies get into a game.
Yeah.
That's what I was like, oh, when that starts to happen, that's what makes it different, right? Like I'm not seeing like this isn't gonna happen until, you know, October. You know, this isn't happening quite yet. But that's when they're at their best, is when they're playing with like such a raw emotion.
Yeah.
Bryce
And I
Harper
think
going like two home runs and a grand slam is kind of like, it's crazy, but at the same time, that's exactly what I expect out of him. You know, like
for what we're paying him, yeah.
right.
I mean,
That's why he's here. That's what I want. Um, when I'm looking at more of
you'd
the
agree, like
quality,
the fire he brings. I think to speak to what you're just saying, like he's that guy. He's been that guy, and
exactly.
sure, he's getting older and maybe a little more mature, and it's a little more measured and not so much volatile. But I think he brings that fire at the end of the day that is going to rile the younger guys. I honestly think between him and um, Schwarber over the past two seasons,
Yeah,
like just as clubhouse guys, really helped like these young guys like Stott come along. You know what I mean? I think you instill the confidence in those guys, you instill level-headedness, and then a little bit of that competitive fire here and there.
Stott had an
And
interview recently, and it was one of the most like it was bizarrely mature. Um, but it was like the conversation around a golden glove came up. He goes, "Yeah, golden glove. Would 100% would love for that to happen. Want to win a championship. That's what I care about more than the golden glove. Get the golden glove, great. Championships first and foremost."
that is very mature. I think it kind of, in a way, it helps the fact that like we've had we've had these last 2 years of being so close to a World Series. And for like Bone and for Stott, they were rookies that first year. Um, and so you have that we're so close. And I think the clubhouse, that attitude kind of speaks to the clubhouse in terms of his older teammates, because it kind of, you can either go as a rookie in the direction of, oh, it's always this easy to get back to a World Series. It'll happen one of these days. I'm just going to care about whatever right now because we'll just get back there whenever. Or it could be like, we were so close. We were so close again. Like, this is the important thing, but we got to work a little harder. And I think that perspective is there. And I think it comes from the fact that you have older guys that have seen like success, but limited success, kind of bringing them along. So I'm really hoping that, especially because we've had a lot of changes in the off season
Mm-hmm.
this year with the roster, like that the clubhouse can kind of meld at the right time. And I do think it can, because 2 years ago when we made that World Series run, it was essentially a brand new team. Like there were a lot of guys that were there for the first time, a couple rookies in the starting rotation. Like I think we have I think we have a recipe for success. We just have to, bring it home
Right.
at the end.
and and so you talk about changes and everything too, and I what what strikes me about the Phillies organization right now is sometimes like you see these changes happen, you see these personnel changes happen during an off season, and it leads you to wonder like, oh, like whose decision was it? Was it the organization? Was it the individual? Like who's chasing what? And right now it's 100% in my mind, if a our core team, if one of them were to leave, I would my guess would be, oh, the clubhouse for some reason decided they weren't a good fit anymore. I can't see a single player that is unhappy in this. And to say I'm happy in Philadelphia is a weird thing. Uh, like
It is.
because it's not a weather thing. Like you're not getting good weather by being here. It's not besides New York being close, there's not a lot to be desired in that element. Like location wise, it's not there. It's really because the the crowd loves you, the city loves you, so you buy into that. Like Jason Kelsey is probably one of the best examples of it.
Dude. Yeah.
It seriously, just and buying back into it. Like the fact that Bryce Harper is happy here, I think also speaks volumes.
Yeah.
Volumes again back to his growth and as far as a person. But baseball was always this dude's like passion, and to like just basically buy in like I'm here for Philly, uh, and that's in like I'm wearing like Philly fanatic stuff as my go to look, right? I think that was the biggest buy in, and that's again what brings me back to my dad is just like when you are able to sell the culture behind something and like really get people to buy into just the environment, that's
Yeah.
different. And I think
Yeah.
that's being Steelers fans, right? That's really what it is. It's like it's the
It's
commitment
that same
to.
type of commitment. Yeah.
I woke up and I watched the video about Joey Porter Jr. getting the call uh, that he was going to get drafted and by the Steelers, and so it's his dad like losing his fucking shit, right? Because it's that knowing that you're coming into this, and this is a lifetime, and we had the luxury of growing up in Reading, seeing a lot of players come through, people come back in rehab. So like you're talking about like Rollins, Pat Burrell, like Howard. You're
Howard.
seeing
So I think Lieberthal, Shane Victorino, like basically that whole World Series team
right,
came.
right, and so there's a huge buy-in, a huge culture behind that. And so that was easy to really buy into the Phillies back then. But I think this version of the Phillies has been very surprising to me and very different,
Yeah.
because it's not a buy-in for me based off of like, oh, I grew up watching these guys. It's a buy-in for me because like when I watch them, it's they're playing not just for themselves, they're playing for the city, and it comes through. Like I was just like, fuck,
Yeah.
this is inspiring, and like to see the
I,
city
yeah.
really buy into those individuals.
Yeah.
Philly's
I
ruthless.
agree.
If we don't like you, we're gonna throw snowballs at Santa.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they might still do that. I do think it starts with Harper in a sense where it's like I was very skeptical when we signed him. I was like, what are we doing? Our team is awful. We're like one of the worst teams in the league, and we're going to take on the most expensive contract in history for one guy. Like,
But
baseball is one of those things where it's like more than likely one person can be the greatest player ever, and your team can still be the worst team in the league.
oh
Just
yeah,
look at the Angels for all of Mike Trout's career. He was far and away the best player in baseball, and yet the Angels were far and away the worst team
you
in the
know,
league.
to the point,
Felt so
if you would have
bad.
said Mike Trout, I'd be like, man, that was a great player. Who did he play for?
Exactly. Who did he play for? He should have came to the Phillies. He's from Southern New Jersey. He's a huge Eagles fan. He's just a huge Philadelphia fan. He should have just come to the Phillies, man.
No, you're right.
Anyway, yeah, no. Culture. I think we've built the culture in the organization now to match the fervor of the fans. And it came together 2 years ago when we made that crazy run. And now we have a little bit of like the success and the taste of success. And the guys in the clubhouse want to continue that. And obviously the fans love to see that type of fight that type of energy. We don't care about having super talented guys or super big name guys. That's never been a Philly thing. It's always about just like gritty fighting tooth and nail, and the people will love you even if you're not great.
I mean, it's I hate to always bring this up, but it's why why do so many people like the Steelers, right? And it was a working man's team, right? Like it was like that blue collar kind of like it's hard work ethic, like, and I think that's where the Phillies are really doing a good job recently. It's just like selling like a good work ethic of like we show up and we play on
I
our
agree.
worst days, we still play. Like we might lose, but it's never going to be like an uninspired run to first. You're gonna see them run their fucking heart out, and it's just like um, the segue over to the next topic being like LSU Iowa, right? And Angel Reese and everything like that too. The most inspired like game that I've seen in terms of the March Madness run, outside of like NC State just fucking killing it and DJ, right? The biggest thing, the most exciting game for me was this LSU Iowa game, but it was again both these teams who I don't think should have been facing up against each other that early in a tournament. Um, but
You're at the mercy of rankings and whatever,
yeah,
what have
they
you.
met when they were supposed to meet. It's just when we would like them to meet was not there. But
Right.
it creates this like really exciting performance, and I think that's what the Phillies do is they provide a really good performance. Last October, like going through Fishtown, it was like red lights outside of everyone's house. Like it looked like we were in Amsterdam, and and the if you walk down the street, you plain clothed walking down the street, someone's yelling at you from God knows where. Like you didn't even know someone was on the same street as you, and they're like, "So and so just hit a home run." Like you're not you're not asking for an update, but if you're out walking, you're getting an update because everyone assumes that you are a Phillies fan and that you want to know what's happening on your way to go watch the Phillies. And that was cool.
That's amazing. That's
That
amazing.
Yeah, that was a really cool environment because I never got to like experience anything like that up until that.
I agree. And that's the thing. Like, I think the closest thing we got to that was when Reading High was going for their first state championship, right? Basketball with Lonnie Walker, and like the city was just in like even, not just the city too. It was like the entire like Berks County was just up in like a fervor about Reading and Lonnie, and like that state championship game when they finally got there, like there were so many people there from Berks County, not just Reading, the city. Um, and maybe that speaks a little bit to how that culture kind of piggybacks off of like Black Hispanic culture and as popular culture, but at the same time, like that was, I think, the closest thing we felt to something like that, where it's like sports is one of those things where if you're not into sports, you might not get why it's important to a lot of people, but it is something that does bring people together at the end of the day. And there's value in that when it happens. And I think when it does happen in that way, that's kind of what it's all about, right? It does kind of transcend it transcends groups, it transcends uh, ideologies a lot of the time. Like it transcends a lot of those things to the point where this is something that is kind of unifying and it is beneficial when you think about it in that way.
That's a really good point because I think if we bring this back to more of what like alternative blacks is about, right? Um, we talk about sports a lot. You know, as much as I joked about it prior to this, we talk about sports a lot. And one of the big sports topics we had was Colin Kaepernick. And so we saw how sport treated him when he utilized his platform and his privilege to talk about it to his detriment, right? But this is why it's really important. Like, yeah, we ask a lot, and we ask for, you know, these organizations to step up a little bit more than they have. But to be fair, they have stepped up in recent years to at least start conversations around certain issues, which is
It's been better.
it's been better. It's not where it should be, but it's a lot better than where it was. Um, and I think that's where the conversations go, right? Because it breaks down those weird barriers that we usually see in different situations, right? So it breaks down just from a job perspective. When I walk into a brewery, unless you're wearing a uniform, I don't know where, like, who you work for. When I walk into a sporting event, I don't know who you work for, because, you know, we're wearing the same thing. We're unified, and when we're doing well and everything's going right, you know, we're all in this together. And that's the cool element of sports, and that's what we buy into a lot, and that's what we love to highlight. But because of that shared experience, I think there's that expectation that we really need to hammer some things home in terms of what's just bare minimum, like getting along shit that's not being met. And I think that's what's really important. And so again, going back to certain cultures, certain like experiences, talking about the Phillies a lot being a very blue collar, like work hard, get this. So when they show up and say like, yeah, work hard, get this, and treat everybody right, it hits home a little harder finally, right? And people start to like connect the dots a little more. And I think that's what we really strive for when we talk about beer. Like, one of the best parts about going to our town brewer, like, if I walked into our town in Lancaster, I don't think I would have been met with the same sort of like accessibility to
And
everything.
I don't think you would have been either. I agree with that. Having been there, and it's not for the lack of hospitality
It's
that
just
the staff
bigger.
give. It's just a bigger space. Yeah.
Right. And so, like, to go in, meet this guy who obviously, like, through my conversation, has conversations with our town, like, in a higher level than I've ever had, but also, like, understanding beer culture not only from a central PA, but also from a Philadelphia, like, thing. And, like, we're talking about all the same things. We're talking about, like, yeah, like, Tired Hands is one step removed from everything, but fuck Tired Hands. We're talking about the evil genius shit that happened a while ago. We talked about all of these things, and I was just kind of like heat checking to be like, I'm vibing with this person. Like, this beer is great. Let's just like heat check on a couple of these different things, and he hits every single one of them. I'm just like, damn, you know, this feels good. And it's like, if I'm gonna promote places within Philly, this actually became like high up on my list of like, oh, if you're black trying to get into craft beer, I can guarantee you walk into this place, it might be a little off-putting, but that person behind the bar is the person you want helping you get into this.
And I think coming from you, that's really high praise, right? I think we are very skeptical about these different places and pessimistic about these places that we walk into. And so to have a first impression like that, like that is high praise. Now I really want to get in there. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
dude's
I really
cool.
want to get in there.
Dude's cool. And like he's worked within Philly like brewing for a little bit, so it's really cool. Realizing it's already almost 8 o'clock.
Yeah. What
And
is happening?
we're going to spend the next portion of this talking briefly about LSU Iowa, because I still think it needs to be discussed. We're going to briefly talk about the Pat Bev fuckery, and then just again briefly, we're going to hit this in 3 parts. The our experience in sports growing up, essentially, right, and which is kind of what we talked about with my dad a little bit already. I'm going to create this as the break,
Yes.
and we'll come back and we'll hit all of those points, and then hopefully try to wrap up before 8:30.
Heck yeah,
See
let's
you.
do it.
Yeah, see you soon.
All right.
Lego. See, I'm gonna start with the Lego. Uh, Chris is pouring some
Lego.
elder pine because elder pine is delish. Uh,
Wait, there we go.
my my censored beer. There's a penis in this cup. Um,
I really love this artwork.
elder pine is fucking insane. Look at that flat Earth. Um,
You know what? Fuck this shit.
let's jump straight into it. We'll start off with the sample, and then let's just power through the rest of the episode. What do you got for me?
Good.
Because I'm
All right.
intrigued. Like,
Yeah. So
it's been a minute.
it has been a minute, and you know what? I think we bring it back because it's a lot of fun. And so today, and this is one that I literally thought of today, it's Sade from 1992, Kiss of Life. As we try to run this. Let's skip this. Here we go. Run it back. All right, we're gonna run it back. There's also so that's the vocals, but then there's also this.
So, admittedly, what happens here is for some reason it's still always hard to get the audio to come through cleanly. And so, what I will say, the reason I gave you the look that I did is for the brief moment I heard music and heard audio and words, I heard For Your Eyes Only.
So the song I chose now, I will say this. This sample, I feel like is sampled heavily throughout hip hop.
Okay.
Because I feel like I've heard it many a times, and it is not For Your Eyes Only that I've chosen.
Okay, so I thought it was a J. Cole sample.
And it does sound like something off of For Your Eyes Only. Like that is a really good, because it's like that jazzy type
Yeah.
of feel. Of
Yeah, which was piggybacked off of Kendrick.
course. Yeah, of course. As To Pimp a Butterfly. I mean, I don't know what Hannah's up to, but she's probably like texting J. Cole to ride his bike to the studio to hurry up and drop this reply. But anyway, sorry. Anyway, what this actually
Big
is.
three, it's big me, nigga. To be fair,
But obviously,
hold
I
on.
think okay.
We have to address it first. I don't think any of it was really aimed at J. Cole.
I think the J. Cole stuff isn't personal.
I think it's
The Drake stuff is clearly personal
right.
because
It's unfortunately we have been lumped up into the sum of three. Therefore, you are an innocent bystander in this because you never positioned it this way. But if we're talking about top dog, I have to establish I am top dog. Fuck y'all. And therefore, I don't take it personally. I don't think he's taking it
so
personally.
I agree with the therefore and after. I don't think it was very personal. What I do think though is innocent bystander isn't 100% correct.
I
Because
think
J. Cole he's on a Drake song, they're going on tour together, and I think Kendrick's kind of like, oh, so this is what y'all doing?
but J. Cole would have went on tour with Kendrick too. So what I will
I
say,
think but I think what it is I still don't think it's personal.
I don't think it is either because what I will say is between the three. So if we're talking about the one that is saying the shit, right? It means we're talking about two. So between the two, between Drake and J. Cole, there is one person that is saying there is no crown. We all should be enjoying this. And then there's the other saying,
On Michael Jackson.
Right. And then there's Kendrick coming in. Well, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. Right? Like, it's just like, nobody's cool because I got this on lock. And so while J. Cole is trying to be like this, everything's kosher, Kendrick comes in and was just like, I might not be Jewish. I might not eat pork, but this is done.
Yeah. I like that. I like that reference. Um, I agree with that, and I do think J. Cole was kind of standing a little too close to Drake, like just in the moment that this happened. So we got hit a little bit, you know. I would love, this is never gonna happen, but what I would love to happen is if it was like this Kendrick J. Cole album that we've been waiting on for over a decade, if it was like a versus type of deal, where like it's just like the competitive thing where they're going at each other on songs for an entire
Yeah.
album. That would be the dream. It's not gonna happen,
No,
but
but
that'd be.
it would be great.
Do you think that you were talking about accomplishments and discography, like from a success standpoint, J. Cole is still number three in that conversation? And I hate to say that because I fucking despise Drake, but he has like the success from a career standpoint. J. Cole, I think, is a late bloomer in that, where like the last like 4 or 5 years have been like amazing.
Right.
Basically, since COVID happened, he's been on a tear,
Yeah.
and he's now like establishing himself. So I think moving forward, it's going to be a different conversation.
Yeah, I think like J. Cole, yeah, late bloomed, in terms of what like really was like successful with him and like where he could stay. And oddly enough, that allowed him to be more complacent and like chill about a lot of stuff while just being able to talk his shit. Whereas like Drake's just still just fucking over there
Drake's
drifting
just
off in
being
whatever corner
Drake's
makes him
just being
feel.
like that corny, like annoying,
What
whatever he's
blows
being.
my mind is so there's a lot of things, and we're not going to talk about it in this live, but I got to put you onto this account called Biracial Lounge because it's all about like that shit about like that middle ground of being here, and essentially like the one I saw today was just like um, if he's just talking to like a biracial like guy or whatever. He's like, if you want your kids to be good athletes, then you need to marry like a black woman so that your kids can be more black, so that they'll be more successful in like sports, right? Um, and it's like these weird conversations, right? Like it's again justifying like your blackness and X, Y, and Z, which is quite the opposite of what we're talking about 9 times out of 10 on this show. Um, and so I think there is a conversation around a lot of that too when it comes to this music. I had a point and I got lost, but it's one of those conversations around like
How he
successful, like how do you
acts.
present yourself, how do you act,
Yeah.
and all of that kind of stuff, right? And I think Drake for some reason wants to show up and like show out in a certain capacity and will do anything and everything to present himself in this image and likeness. I think J. Cole takes more of he has a personal philosophy and that's what he follows. And it's working for him now. And like whatever he
Yeah.
did, the cool thing at first, and now he's just about being him. Kendrick hits a different like level of shit sometimes, but like Kendrick is still very much about him and his
Yeah.
and his perspective.
DJ Cole are very similar in that respect. Like they're doing their thing. They're not deviating. They're
Yeah,
gonna do what they're gonna do.
and
I do
so
oh
I
sorry, go
I
ahead.
think Kendrick and J Cole are very much on like similar like pathways where they follow the same thing. I think you're right. Kendrick ends up being a little more successful in that path line, and he's taking the main road, like the main road where you're taking like the auxiliary route and like it gets you to where you're going locally, but you're not going to hit major shit over here. Versus Drake trying to be kind of like a turnpike, and it's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
you're just
this
skipping
is
everything to get to the end goal.
this
But
is arguably the faster route. But if I put my GPS on every once in a while, it will tell me not to take it.
yeah, yeah, I think Drake is obviously he's pop music. I would lump him in like he's kind of the rap what Taylor Swift is to like country music in the sense that
But see,
she kind of used that to catapult into pop and now she's big because it's just pop music.
but see, this is the conversation. This is where I don't want to get into today. But people
Okay,
are
we
losing
need to
their
bookmark this.
people are losing their mind over Beyonce's like fucking pinky toe in the country, and I'm just like, nobody batted a fucking eye when Taylor finally said, "Oh, I'm not country. I'm gonna go into pop." No one batted an eye. No one batted an eye when Miley decided to fucking. And this is where, like, I will concede to you because I know you and I have had arguments about this. When Miley was doing her fucking, like, Jordan song back in the day, and you and I were arguing about the exploitation and appropriation about what Miley Cyrus was doing. Um, However, what kills me is just like everyone's losing their fucking mind about Beyonce doing this shit. I was just like, yeah, but like, where were you country fans who are losing your mind about fucking Beyonce? What were you saying to fucking Florida Georgia Line? You know, when they were like, that's
Where
your
Georgia
fucking
Line was basically like pop, trap, whatever the fuck they are.
right. It's like this was your country god, and like you didn't like fucking say like, oh my god, they need to like step it back and bring it into country. Like they're not saving country. You guys love this shit, and now that
Basically,
like
whenever a black person gets into country and there's any type of cross in any type of genre, like we saw the same exact thing with Lil Nas X a few years ago, right? It's the same exact conversation.
and actually this was my transition into the LSU Iowa game.
Well, let's finish this sample that you tried to gerrymander
Fuck.
past
I'm
because you
sorry.
didn't know it. I'll give you one more second on the beat.
Who is it? Sade. What's the song?
Sade, Kiss of Life. If I can play it. God damn it. These big stubby fingers. Trying to hit play as a bitch on this thing, apparently.
To you, look at the sky. It's the color of love. Your heart all the way. How many times love inside I can't say. When I was late to you, I knew you only. I swear, oh, feel my heart beat.
Hmm. Who is it? I'm itching.
So you mentioned J. Cole for Your Eyes Only, and I want to check after this to see if like where you are with that. But this particular one, this was actually MF Doom.
No shit.
This is Doomsday off of his 1999 first album. This is like his it's not the intro skit track, but it's his first actual song. Operation Doomsday is the album.
Okay.
Doomsday is the name of the song. And here we go.
Here.
When I was to you, I don't
I hear, yeah, it's copy paste, right? Like that's crazy.
So crazy because it's funny. I was just kind of trying to get through MF Doom's catalog again,
I need to do that.
and like this is his first album from 1999 as MF Doom, Operation Doomsday. That's like the first song, and I forgot, like I wasn't expecting that kind of like jazzy
Yeah.
beat. You know what I mean? And I was like, damn, that sample sounds so damn familiar. Like there has to be other songs with the sample. So I'm going to be looking into this as we discuss.
Yeah. I will pivot over to the fuck, what were we talking about that really brought me over to this Florida Georgia Line and all this other shit. So when we talk about Angel Reese and when we talk about Caitlin Clark, what I would consider arguably the most entertaining game of this March Madness is the element that, you know, being a woman in sports. This is the conversation that's hard for us to have because we don't offer much perspective from it. Um, because we're not a woman in sports, right? So that's obviously like the
Clearly.
hardest part. So you know, being a man in sports, being a black man in sports, like yeah, you get the, you know, the hatred just from being a celebrity versus like the hatred of being like a black celebrity or a gay celebrity and everything like that, right? But then add the women element on top of it, right? And so like to deal with what Angel Reese has been dealing with, especially when it comes to like as a man, like the worst thing that can happen is like I'm gonna fucking kill you. Being a woman, they were like, you know what? You know what's worse than killing you? Raping you, right? And so to deal with like I'm not dealing with like just only death threats. I'm dealing with these type of threats as well, right? Um, and then to come out after everything and be like, you know, this year's been hard. Like after all the success I've had and the celebrity that I've had, I've also had to deal with this, and then to be kind of met with a, you know, you can't act like all tough and then like act like Courage the Cowardly. This is what old boy, you know who I'm talking about, who said this, like you can't be act all tough and then be met with Courage the Cowardly Dog in response to all this. It's a old Eagles player actually. He was born in Dallas. He was an Eagles. He was an Eagles player and a Browns player. So I really don't care for him.
John Runyon?
Hmm?
John Runyon?
No.
All right.
Let me see. What was his name?
Eagles and Browns player?
Emmanuel Acho.
He didn't play much, but anyway.
Just saying. This is what he had to. That's what he had to say about Angel Reese.
He's kind of like a hot take machine for the sake of a hot take machine. I feel like a lot of the time, I don't I don't take any opinion he has. I don't take him seriously.
And that's fair, but it is still dangerous when someone.
I don't know, and I don't say that as a defense of him. I
Right.
actually, it's the
I
opposite.
knew it.
I'm like, oh no, he is not. Unfortunately, he has a platform, but he is not a variable source of information or opinion.
Right. So to be fair, when I say like, um, when you say that, I don't take it as a like, oh, you know, I don't listen to him, and so it's not dangerous. It's I know that you are very carefully calculated with who you listen to and subscribe to, and they actually like say, oh, this is like valuable resource and information, and so that's where I hear it from you. Not to discredit like the effect that happens here. And so for me, what it was looking at this game too, right? What should have been taken away from this was an incredible game. No matter how you slice it down, yeah, Caitlin Clark hits 40 some points, fucking nuts, breaks a record, all this other stuff. Like still, it was a great game. It was one of these back and forth, hard fought games. Should she have gone out at the end, Angel Reese gone out the way that she did? That probably wasn't a foul, but who cares? Like it's the game. It's what happens. It's in the moment. I'm not like bent out of shape over that. I am bent out of shape over how they treat the two, and it's been consistent over at least last year that we've talked about this. I don't like how they make a villain out of Angel Reese and make a saint out of Caitlin Clark, because in my mind they both act the same way. I don't think one is better than the other. I think they're both arrogant assholes, and I love them for it in different rights. However, I know that my bias says fuck Caitlin Clark because our boy James from DC from Barrel and Flow has said this, like,
Yeah.
y'all showed your fucking asses out against Angel Reese, and so when I keep it a same type of energy for Caitlin Clark, I better not hear shit. It's like, because I see a certain amount of people show up on the one side, and so I'm gonna speak my ass out on the other because I know she doesn't have the people like showing up that way.
I completely agree with that. And it even goes back to like that incident where she did the "You Can't See Me" thing, and it was purported to be against some opposing player, and the opposing player came out and was like, it wasn't even at me, it was like at her training staff.
But that was Caitlin Clark again.
Yeah, exactly. And it wasn't at a player. So like it's even more so like it also kind of speaks to the fact that even in that type of situation, someone who is vilified, who's held up as a saint in against other similar people of her stature, still faces those types of issues when we're covering things.
Right.
So imagine how it is for Angel Reese then.
Right.
If Caitlin Clark's getting flack for doing this to nobody, like clearly the discourse around Angel Reese is a little bit, and I say a little bit, I mean way overly heavy-handed. You know what I'm saying?
I
All in
agree.
perspective.
My bladder's the worst. I'm gonna be right back. Because I'm gonna listen to it while I'm gone. Take your hot take on the LSU Iowa thing if you have anything else to say. But I want you to start the conversation around growing up in sports, I guess. Like just reminiscing a little bit more of this, what sports was like for us and why sports tend to be a very important conversation.
Yeah. So I guess anything else about Iowa LSU, it's kind of the same thing that we've talked about in the past last year during March Madness, the same type of deal thing that Tyler just brought up. The angle that things are portrayed in, like all things equal, these are two pretty much like equal types of competitors, and that's just how they should be treated. And of course, Angel Reese comes out and says it's been difficult because of X, Y, and Z over the past few years, and Caitlin Clark hasn't said anything like that because she hasn't had that type of ridicule. And she's also come out in defense of she's coming out in defense of Angel Reese. She's come out in defense of a lot of people in her time, saying it's like, hey, like I'm just doing what I'm doing, and the competitive nature against other people, like they're just being competitive, and there's nothing wrong with that, with what's going on here. You know what I mean? There's nothing malicious like people are trying to make it out to be. And it's kind of one of those things where I think it's the fact that it's women, so it's hyper, like everything is just polarizing. They're competing and they're going against these traditional norms that are in society for what, women should be. And I feel like a lot of people just have a problem with that in general. And then you add the race element on top of all of that, and it just takes it to another level. So I'm hoping continued success for both Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark. And it's just Caitlin Clark can't. It's not her fault that people are like clamoring over her in a sense.
Yeah.
She seemed to have said the right things when being asked. And once again, she's a college student. How
Both of
much
them.
onus are you putting on her to be that voice yet? Maybe in the future. But the WNBA definitely has that culture to cultivate that type of thing because just by its nature, as I just said, like most of the players in the WNBA have some type of activist
Right.
leaning towards them because of it. So
Yeah.
I think it's no one's gonna remember this next year
No.
in terms of no one's gonna
Well,
care.
that
You know what I
remains to
mean?
be seen. I'll be interested. I think you're probably right. I think you're leaning more towards the actuality
Yeah, I
than
mean,
I am of. I think more people will be aware of this in a future documentary than anything, and I guess that's what I'm
yeah.
looking at. Because unfortunately, what exists right now is we're looking at this at a very Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, like level of it, where it's probably a little more on the terms of LeBron
Like a
James,
great
Tom
white
Brady.
savior. You feeling it like that, like a great white savior for the WNBA?
So what I think is like unfortunately the WNBA is not nearly built up the way that it needs to be or should be. Again, when we're looking at this most recent March Madness, the most exciting game to me, the most exciting player might have been the NC State DJ. What his name is? I forget his last name, but he has probably been the most exciting player because he breaks traditional like stereotypes of what you think as an athlete. Actually, a lot of times when I was watching him, it reminded me of playing basketball with you. Just being a force in the like he moves so smooth, and I fucking hated you for being able to one move the way that you did, and the thing I had going for me was fucking length, and you took it away from me because you just had size coming in to separate that in a very legal way, and it just created problems, and it was a lot of fun playing with you, and I think that was fun to see on that type of level, on a D1 level. We're talking about very rudimentary like blacktop shit, and
Yeah,
that's very well refined areas that they're doing it there. So that was exciting, but I think the most exciting game from a like technical standpoint was the LSU Iowa game, and they're unfortunately pitting these two people against each other as if they are the greatest of the greats of greats, versus like LeBron James, arguably one of the best basketball players, if not the best basketball player of all time, versus Tom Brady, the one of the arguably most winningest players of all time. And if LeBron and to put it in this way, if LeBron James was to be on a boat in Florida in the Gulf throwing the fucking trophy across boat to boat, he would have never heard the end of it. Versus like that was very okay for Tom Brady to do, but like we question LeBron's commitment to black culture because could he not be giving more money to the culture versus he created a whole fucking like school system in Akron and funds that shit, and
yeah.
they are successful individuals. And so I was like, but what has Tom Brady actually done for anybody besides Tom Brady? And we're not questioning
It's
it. And that's
it,
where I see the Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark at no fault of the individuals, but that's the conversation. And it's just like, no, 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 no. Treat both of them with the same energy. Either they're both doing great or they're both could be doing more. And the fact that they're so young, it makes no sense. And so
Yeah,
show up in more support for Angel is all
yeah,
I said.
I agree with that. And I think it's one of those things where it's like the subjects involved agree with each other in everything, but it's literally the people and weirdly like adults who don't have anything to do with any of this talking about teenagers, children, or they're not teenagers
Hey,
anymore, but
hey,
like
we can drink.
children,
We can have a beer with them.
essentially, barely. Like,
Barely.
you
No,
know,
but
the
yeah.
more I think about that, the Mrs. King come back and talk to me when you're 25 type of deal, like maybe not 25 is the cutoff, but like me at 31 talking to me at 21, completely different conversation. It's true. And
I
so
wouldn't
you're
want to
going
hear me at
military, what is
21 year
that?
old me doesn't want to hear 31-year-old me.
Yeah, 21-year-old me is wondering why 31-year-old me is listening to a podcast, much less making one. But
21-year-old me is wondering, like, are you alive?
oh, your liver's holding up? Oh, that's good. That's good. Okay, cool. I can continue on this path of destruction.
21's like, wait,
Um,
wait, wait, you're alive?
immediately calls up bros to go drink.
We're gonna spout. Anyway,
Yeah,
all
but
right.
that does kind of transition ourselves, I guess, in a way, into the less fun part of our growing up with sports because it kind of speaks to the fact that like Caitlin Clark has to deal with just being an athlete and a woman.
Yeah,
And I say just not lightly there because obviously being a
absolutely.
woman and being an athlete, not taken seriously in all of the other things that come with that, but adding the race effect on top of that in an Angel Reese sense, like why isn't she doing all this? Why isn't she doing that? Well, what what did you do that was so great for the world when you were 20 or 21? You know,
I can't answer that.
it's kind of that same deal like when we talk about sports where it's like and baseball's a great example where we had to and we were always told to we had to be the people that kept the upper hand. We had to keep our level-headedness about us. We couldn't act out in a way, even if the other team was doing those same exact things, we couldn't respond in kind because there was always that stigma against Reading, right? It's always these are the inner city kids, these are
And
the black and brown kids.
and to be fair, that was a large point, at least from my understanding, that was a large point for my dad, right? Like that was, you know, I realized that like we were receiving that message from somebody that like that wasn't the status of like standard messaging. Like so like we approach things a lot differently. I fortunately didn't like get to see as much as you did when it came to that like kind of visceral and that hatred. Like the story that stands out is all that time that coal bowl or whatever, that trophy that
So
you and Pop,
possible, yeah, it's a wild time, man.
that is something different, because that's something that I didn't like receive as much, and especially coming from a sport that was more like white focused than like football, at least perceived. Like you would think it would be the opposite. You think that I would have received more shit for being black within that sport versus you receiving shit from being like black in football, because like to me that doesn't compute. um, and so
But it's also, but I do think it does in the sense that like the tennis team, in a way, it's very diverse and it's far more diverse than every other tennis team in the immediate area. But it's also far less diverse than the football team
yeah,
or the baseball team. Like it's assumed that, hey, there's a bunch of black dudes coming out to play football with us today. Are we gonna kick all these black dudes' asses? It's all like that. But like
Right.
with tennis, it's kind of like you were the black sheep in that, so
Yeah. I mean,
you had a different challenge.
I was during like summer, not like when the actual like sport came out and I was playing the different teams, like because everybody was coming into Reading to play the sport.
Yeah.
It was a weird dynamic because I guess at the time with like Reading football, I don't know if you guys were like necessarily, you were a couple years behind, like ahead of Anzalone and like a couple other players that ended up making it into the league, right? Like,
I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't know of anyone that made the league. I mean, I guess Hershey technically made the league,
yeah,
the practice squad.
right. I mean, because like
Um,
we were definitely years like behind Bryant's, right? Like,
for years behind Bryant's. In fact, they were coming back to put the fear of wrath in us.
right. And so I think from that element of it, like, there was just so much happening in sports in that like time period. So like people weren't coming into Reading to play and learn football in the same sense that like people were coming into Reading apparently to fucking like learn tennis and be like one of the most competitive like tennis players by jumping into a Reading league to then go into a county,
Yeah.
school district, right?
Could you speak to that a little bit? Because like this is an interesting talking point, I think, with terms of experience and memories. Like there are very good aspects of that happening because maybe not the parents, maybe not the generation before, but maybe those kids that come in the summers and grow up, like those kids actually have an understanding and respect for the Reading kids, the inner
Right.
city kids, because they're with them from a young age. They're growing with them.
So
And
one
they're with you and the instructors, the people that the kids that are high school kids at the time, or maybe college kids at the time, or right out of college, like you were always present as a figure in that. So I wonder, I know we've talked a lot in the past about it and how it's kind of maybe taken away a little bit from the school program success because Reading's coming in. It's this nationally accredited program that's nationally recognized program. It's so good and it's building these great tennis players throughout the county. But then they go back to their schools and then they're coming to Reading during the school year and whooping up on people.
right.
But
I think it's a weird like balancing act, right? Because at one point it sounds like, oh, they're just like making off and like benefiting from the program, but in a weird way, like it's really allowing, it's showing off to Reading that Reading is actually competitive and can compete and is oftentimes a better option. Like I Berks County's not a great option. Like let's be clear here. Like
yeah,
uh,
agreed. It's not a sports mecca by any
not
stretch of
even
the
a sports mecca.
imagination.
Like academic wise, like you ain't
That's
shit
yeah,
for going to YMSing. Like let's be clear here. You're not shit for going to Holy Name or Central Catholic. I remember like after my freshman year of high school and like having the unfortunate event of me getting jumped on my way home, right? Like the conversation was, oh, do I go to like Holy Name? And I went to Holy Name, and at this time I wanted to be a lawyer, and the actual better option was for me to stay into Reading because what was half a semester or half a like year at Reading in terms of a law course was a
yeah,
year at Holy Name. I was like, no, no,
yeah.
no, no, wait, hold up. There's no
Plus, not
way.
yeah, and that's not even to bring up like the media communications aspect that wasn't even curriculum based. That was just extra stuff that you did.
Oh yeah, there's no option at a Catholic school that made more sense than me staying at a public school. So I was like, fuck that.
Yeah,
So that exists. I think the real benefit of like the core tennis program and everything, now that I'm so far removed from it, is the fact that like it forces the people that unfortunately are going to have a leg up already because of life, and maybe people don't want to like acknowledge it, but like it's true. It's they're the people that are going to be in charge of hiring these people eventually later are going to finally realize, oh, I'm not better off because I'm from this area, and it's like actually this area might have more to benefit. And so
Yeah,
if we can expose, I think that was the true mission, was if we can expose everybody to everybody, it benefits everybody.
it
and
does.
and so I think you, I think me, I think a lot of us that grew up in Reading, which is this weird microcosm of culture, got to learn that no one's better than anybody, and from many different ways, because we got exposed to the wealth, we got exposed to the poverty. Like I think you and me both were living in a middle ground of all of this, and so we saw it from both ends. Like we saw people that had to resort to things that a lot of people don't understand and wouldn't understand, and we don't agree with, but like I'm not going to hold it against somebody for that's the
That's
easiest
it is, right?
path.
That's what it is. It's the understanding that
Right.
you don't hold people to their actions all the time for who they are as a person, because there are circumstances that push you to that. And like you said, like I think core, looking back on it now, and we've had many conversations in the moment about the frustration of that fact that you're kind of cultivating the talent countywide to then it's a net negative for the actual school district's tennis team. But at the end of the day, you look at the girls' tennis team who goes out and wins then against that. Like the
I
talent's there, the people are there, and I think the net benefit of what you're saying makes it worth it at the end
Right,
of the day,
because the
right?
net benefit is I'm gonna say this, and maybe someone will see this later and think I'm an asshole, but there are so many people on that girls tennis team that are going to benefit from at least having the opportunity, not even D1, but like a D2 opportunity for like sports, and it's going to get them closer to education. And that wasn't there before. You had to be the number one player, barely
Yeah,
making it into counties, to even potentially be thought of like that. And now Reading is considered a viable
agreed.
option to source from, and that is beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Beautiful.
And you know what? That's the thing. Core helped do that, but they went and did that. They went and did that to like legitimize and establish the fact that the entire team, like, boom, there it is. We have this level to us as a program now. You can't you can't discredit that because it's obviously core bred, right? It's obviously City of Reading bred. So you have a lot more legitimacy when you're talking about that.
I will say there are three realms that come out of Reading in terms of tennis. There is the core tennis. There is the Conrad Weiser, like Ryan Nahr tennis, which is a byproduct of core tennis.
Yeah,
He's not a byproduct of it, but he got to buy in and learn a little bit. And I tell you, there are core principles that he took and ran with and did better. But it comes from being part of core. And then there's why I'm missing that it's just money. And so if 2 out of 3 is built off of principle of culture, which is we brought this back earlier in the episode with the Phillies, right? If the culture wins, classic example, Phillies Yankees. Yankees will always be looked at as money. Phillies will always be looked at as culture. Right now, the culture is winning.
I love that. Damn. Way to bring it back around. Just round of applause right quick for if I didn't have to cook dinner after this, I would see your shot,
Right.
which I saw. I saw
You
your shot.
saw it, but you
Not going to
ignored it.
raise you.
Yeah. I raised it too.
I will not raise you another shot.
Look, I'm.
I will raise you half a shot.
There you go. This was a good episode. I think there's a lot to be said when it comes to sports. I think it's a conversation that is always worth bringing up, especially when certain things happen. I'm glad that we were able to do this around very important moments that might not be viewed as important moments at the moment. Um, and so I will always appreciate our conversations. Just for kind of like challenging the way that we even think about it, because I think sometimes we come into these lives and we have a certain topic and we have a perceived notion of what we think we're going to talk about, and then
Yeah.
I think it builds upon itself, and I think it changes, and to bring it into I think I brought it into a C, but I'm gonna bring it into a complete O in terms of the conversation tonight. And we kind of talked it. We started with the shot. We're gonna end with the shot, in remembrance, and memorial of Jim Bob. But I think one thing that he had always challenged us to do was to think more about the conversation at hand, to think more about a topic, because we might have an initial gut reaction, but the more we talk, the better things will be. And
Yeah.
so the more we talk, the less likely we are to see that our eagle rare is being taken away from us.
That was the plan the entire time. I finally just realized it because he's going to have us think critically about things. So while we're doing that, we're distracted. So he can take all the alcohol.
No, but
I
yeah.
I think in closing with everything that you just said, I obviously sports is kind of that metaphor for life that we always talk about, and obviously we didn't talk about frivolous sports things tonight. We talked a lot about how it relates to a lot of the things we always talk about in terms of diversity, in terms of inclusion and representation. And I kind of, my big wraparound from C to O moment is kind of the thought of, we're talking about these things the way we are, and we're talking about core, and I do wish that Jim Bob could have seen us from in these past 6 years, because I think that time to now is where we really started to, through the podcast, with each other, kind of gain that critical thinking of going back and forth with topics and actually analyzing things where we weren't doing that before. And that's always what he preached to us. And I think just kind of having that realization that, like, we are in this critical thinking lens, kind of the byproduct of that, of him distilling that in us always. Even in sports, it's always about the mind. It's always about thinking about what should be next, what's going to be next, thinking about how you're presenting yourself to the general public and what is right and what is wrong. Um, because clearly he was more than a coach to us. He was a mentor. He was a father. He was a father figure to us. And so saying all that, I'm I'm excited to continue to push the podcast forward, talk about these things critically, um, still hit the fun, frivolous things when we can, obviously. Uh, but it's just really a blast to break down these types of sports related things critically, because uh, while there's plenty of people out there, I guess, that do that type of thing, I do think we're unique in the lens that we bring.
Right.
And also, who are we? We're not trying to get a click. We're just doing this because this is what we like to do. So we're bringing our real feelings towards it, and our real thinking lens towards it. And I think that's beneficial and it's a lot of fun.
That's
So
for sure.
that's what I got to say about that.
That's all I gotta say about that. Yeah, if not for him, we wouldn't be doing it in this perspective for sure.
Yeah,
Like just talking about life through craft, and that's I think craziest element of it all. Especially this period of time, trying to think back over, as you said, the last 6 years, and really like it's crazy because like what could be seen as a very easy thing to us, okay, we're going to talk about craft beer, we're going to talk about just everything that's happening in life, and like, let's just continue doing it, that can be seen as very easy. But I there's a lot that is not, that wouldn't happen without him. We're not pushing a show about this, about what's it like to be in craft beer for Black, because if he wasn't in it, we wouldn't be in it. We would just be going out, having a good time, and just like whatever. And then just like pushing it through its envelope more and more every time we develop a different, like, or notice a different stage. And I think that's what's really helped us not settle for less, because I think there's a lot of different times, for what we can consider success or not success. There are moments that we could have just like coasted, and I think at any time that we have looked at something different from what we're doing, it's because we realize there's a opportunity to shift. There's a lane for us, and I think that's what's made this a very interesting journey, and one that's not stopping anytime soon.
absolutely not. I 100% agree. I'm excited to move forward, continue to do these analytical things and drink while we're doing analytical things in Jim Bob's honor. And yeah, that's how I'm looking at it.
All right. Well, until next time, we'll peace. But I'll be in contact with you soon.
Yes, absolutely. And my computer's about to die, apparently.
Oh, okay. Well, bye. Beer. See ya.
I had too much faith in my new battery. It's at 5%, but it lasted 2 hours, so I'm actually kind of
Oh, that is
impressed.
impressive. But until next time.
Peace. I'll talk to you soon.